Welcome, welcome to Youth Oasis. I am Timeless Tate, the Media and Outreach Coordinator here at Youth Oasis. Now I'm going to open the floor to our guest here. I'm going to start with Ms. Takoa.
Good morning. My name is Takoa Boltner. I'm the Executive Director of Youth Oasis.
Yes, yes. Welcome. And our special guest.
Good afternoon and Happy New Year. My name is Kathy Cusimano, and I'm a child and youth trafficking advocate, as well as prevention coordinator for Child Advocacy Services in Hammond.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. All right. Today we will discuss youth labor and trafficking, providing education resources around this tragic issue that's affecting our community. We hope after this you have knowledge and some helping skills to reduce the crisis with your support and action. So before we get started, let's check in. All right, how are we feeling? How are we doing today?
I guess I'll go. I'm doing great, feeling good. I'm so happy to be here. Can I go ahead and give a trigger warning? I do want to just warn our audience that if there's anything we're talking about today that does cause you anything, any kind of trigger or emotional response, it's absolutely normal. I would ask that you take good care of yourself, find somebody to talk to, reach out to us, or just take care of yourself because this is a sensitive topic.
Thank you, Ms. Kathy, for reminding us to take care of ourselves. And as for me, I am doing okay. My intentions for this new year is I'm reminding myself that every day is a practice, not a performance. And so I have an opportunity to get it right. And if I didn't get it right today, I can show up for practice tomorrow until I make this new habit or lick the lesson, whatever it is. So right now I'm still excited. Check in with me next week. I might not be.
I love that. Yes. I think patience is for me. Patience and being present. I think that's my two things for this year. Yeah. All right. We ready to get started?
Sure.
Let's go. Let's go. All right. So before we become like community leaders, we need to also understand where it starts from in the definition. So, what is the basic definition of child youth and labor and trafficking?
Well, there's a big legal definition, but basically, in my words, it would be the exploitation of a person for either labor or sex for an exchange of anything of value or money. So legally, there's a lot of verbs that they include in the definition. So it can be a person that knowingly recruits, transports, provides, sells, purchases, or entices someone to be used for either sex or labor without properly paying them or accepting that. The other thing I like to say is that force, fraud, and coercion are also part of the legal definition. And with sex trafficking, it does not have to be proven over the age of 18, under the age of 18, sorry about that. And for labor trafficking, it has to be proven in all situations.
That is good to know. I was wondering if the force was still present over 18. So good, thank you for that. Yes. I like to give a more, I guess, environment-based definition for people who are not in the profession. And so if you're looking at in places where sex work, you see a lot of sex work, you want to make sure that, again, everyone who's engaged in sex work is of age and consenting. And in some areas, it's not, right? And so that's one environment where you'll find sex and labor trafficking. And then for labor trafficking, you'll find a lot of this in drug selling environments. And so this is holding, this is stashing, this is transporting, and drug dealers will often find unaccompanied minors or accompanied minors who are just vulnerable to do this work, and that is a form of trafficking, just to kind of widen our view of where these things can occur.
Right. We call that the gray economy. You're exactly right, Chakoa. It's not your regular economy. Also, if you don't mind me adding, is that in a trafficking situation, if there's just a youth who is being paid anything of value, it doesn't have to be money, by someone that's over 18, that purchaser can also be considered a trafficker. So even if the youth is online, maybe putting dates online, meet somebody online, and they have any kind of sex act, it can be a picture, it can be a video, it can be something physical, but anytime there's any promise, it doesn't even have to be given to them, a promise of anything of value, that person that is doing the purchasing or the promising of something of value is also a trafficker.
Thank you for that, Ms.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy. You said an important word as audience for me.
What?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So you said a very important word today, coercion. Can you please
Coercion.
explain that word for the audience?
Yeah, and coercion is a psychological thing. So it's kind of a thing in their brains where a trafficker or a perpetrator, exploiter, I like to call them, is simultaneously meeting the needs of a victim while abusing them. So it's all in the brain. It's making the victim feel dependent on them. It can be breaking their spirits, giving them impaired judgments. It can be a trauma bond. So a lot of times, and one thing that I've noticed with my youth is that their traffickers are people that they think they know and they think they can trust. And so our traffickers take this time to groom them, to make them feel like they're the only one that understands them. And then they gradually push them into the trafficking. It's not something these youth see coming. They think they're in a relationship with somebody that cares about them. And oftentimes the traffickers use a situation where they're like, I need some financial help this month. Could you help me out? And of course, the youth thinks this person cares about them. So they're like, of course, I want to help you out. And they end up sending them out to do these sex acts or to take these pictures. It's a really tough situation. And that kind of, in a nutshell, it's that lying and that manipulation that really, I think that explains coercion the best.
I think it's a very good idea to highlight that word coercion, to help everyone understand how insidious this is when it comes to the youth population, because coercion involves, is not always forceful coercion. Like they're not, it's especially not with youth. While yes, there are those horrible stories of youth with guns to their heads being forced into a car to traffic, most often than not, as Kathy mentioned, this is just strictly grooming. And if you have youth who are already developing because of their brain, they are seeking information. They are seeking information to solve problems. And when you have an unmet need, the person who comes to fill that need states that in order for you to fill this need, they're teaching you that you must do this to receive this. And at this point, it does not become something that exists in this other area. It becomes ingrained as a part of their day-to-day life. They now become normalized to this environment. And these things are expected and normal and okay by the people who they trust, the people who are meeting the needs. And so coercion is, as Kathy mentioned, a promise of something. It's a promise of something, usually something that they want. And it may not be money, it may be shelter, it may be clothing, but it is attached to a need. And so again, the idea, something we talk about a lot with childism versus adultism, but that a lot of us see children exhibiting behavior and ascribe some type of emotional attachment or emotional definition of that behavior versus the curiosity of where that behavior might be coming from, if that makes sense. And I might be getting too much in the weeds there a little bit, but we tend to fall along the definition of where consent is, whether or not we are going to deem something as trafficking or not. And it's important to understand that consent is not really the metric that the youth are using when it comes to issues of trafficking. Because if you are promising something to meet my need, I'm consenting to have the need met. I'm not consenting on how the need is met. And I think that's an important difference and distinction to make.
Yeah, because the true definition of consent is both parties agreeing without manipulation, lying, or force, anything like
Fully
that.
informed.
Fully
Right,
informed.
exactly. So you're exactly hit on it. And legally, a youth can't consent to sex till they're 18. So how can they consent to sex for something of value? They can't. And so that, like I said, that person who's paying or offering, providing to pay is then the trafficker, if there's not a third party. The other thing that you said that was so important is that oftentimes these perpetrators and traffickers are the ones educating our youth and children on what a relationship looks like, what the expectations are. And so it really becomes so blurry for them, to understand what's safe, what's healthy, and what that looks like. Yeah.
Thank you for explaining it. Thank you. All right, let's move on to our next one. What are the ages and race that's most vulnerable of youth labor and sex trafficking?
You want me to start?
Yes.
Yes.
So, I have to be real honest. I think that all of our youth are vulnerable. When we talk about a vulnerability, it's something that we can't control, something out of our control. So I think a lot of the populations tend to be our youth that are in foster care, that are runaways, that are suffering some homelessness, having a lot of distress in their lives. But I have seen both races be affected. I do feel like, from my personal experience in 2020, I served 20 youth that had been trafficked, and 6 of those were Black children, and 12 of those were white Caucasians. But I still feel like our trafficked populations are so undercounted because it's such a hidden crime.
Absolutely. I agree with that, Kathy. And again, I'm going to kind of, zoom out and give more of a broad explanation and definition. The demographics that are going to most be affected or are targeted is going to mirror the demographics that correlate to poverty and lack of job opportunities. And then, of course, yes, foster care, detention are often pipelines that
Absolutely.
can provide perpetrators and a population who is kind of ripe for the picking, to use a rather crass phrase in this topic. And also areas that lack infrastructure. So I'm talking rural areas. These are areas where if someone does call the police on the perpetrator, they're not going to get there in time, or at least they have time to get away. If they hurt someone or someone is hurt in this trafficking venture, they have a long way to go to get to a hospital. There's no hospital at all. And when you have these crucial pieces of infrastructure missing, you have a lot of people who are uncounted. You have a lot of people who fly under the radar because if you find someone who's, dead in a field, and I threw that out there before any warnings, but if you find a dead body in the field, depending on when that happened, all information that you could use to find a reason of why is probably gone or contaminated at that point. And so again, they can hide out in these rural areas and or take children from these rural areas because the family, the community, the people don't really have the resources to go out and launch massive support and searches for these children. And so these, again, as I agree with Kathy, all youth are at risk. It really, but you'll find more risk when there's no stable income, no stable housing, no stable health care. Lack of stability leaves these pathways open for someone to exploit. And that's the quick and dirty part of it, right?
And another, if you don't mind me adding just a little bit more, is that childhood trauma. So about 90% of trafficked youth have been previously sexually abused or sexually assaulted as a child. And I also have to just say that our LGBTQ population and our boys, I feel like our boys, it's so much harder for them to disclose that I just feel like we're not seeing. I feel like they're out there. We just haven't seen them and been able to get there to help them on their healing process. So a lot of the people that are in the system, we kind of already said that. You touched on poverty. That is a huge one, for our families that are having a tough time making meeting their own needs. That's a very tough population as well.
Yes, I thank you both for those important things y'all just mentioned. I really think that we often forget about the queer community, LGBTQ community, who may be affected in this. Often
Absolutely.
forgot about in the topic. And then, Mr. Cole, you hit on a very important point about the location in rural places. Oftentimes we think metropolis, these big cities. No, it's happening also in small towns and rural areas. So y'all both hit on the important parts. Thank you, thank you.
Absolutely. Oh,
All right. Labor fields. What are some types of labor and fields or harsh work that most youth are victims of?
in Louisiana, I'm sorry, did you want to go to Koa or you?
No,
Okay.
Yeah, you go first.
We definitely have some tough situations here. We've got our seafood industry, we've got our agriculture, a lot of the restaurants and construction, and then our drug trade. We talked a little bit about that gray economy. I do want to shed just a little light and ask people to be aware, especially during hurricane season when the construction workers come in, that those people are not being labor trafficked, just asking some questions, making sure they're safe, they're being taken care of, they're being paid properly, they're not overworking them. I think that's a big, place that we need to look at.
In my line of work, what I'm seeing, most of our youth are unfortunately have histories of sex trafficking. And I think that's primarily because, again, sex trafficking and drug trafficking, even though drug trafficking is not talked about as much. But again, when you have those gray economies as the only economies that are open to people who are disenfranchised because of the lack of social structures in place, then you're going to see more people exploiting these economies for youth. Again, we talk about the stashing and the holding. If you're a 16-year-old male and you are looking for work and you've applied and no one's called you, and your brother's cousin friend, again, somebody who's preying on a tiny connection, you know this person though, because you've seen him and he's cool with your brother. And so he asks, and he's cool with you. And he's been nice to you. He's never done anything wrong to you. And he asks you to hold his weed. And that seems innocent enough to that youth because I'm not selling it, I'm not buying it, I'm just holding it, right? And once that becomes normalized, it's going to grow because they're gonna, offer the money for it and they're gonna come through and they're gonna let go, right? I'm not gonna ask you to do anything today. Next week, we're gonna do it again. because I just ran into this again. Let's see how much more you can do. And then I'm going to start slowly increasing the amount that I'm giving you. Right. And then now your those pathways in your brain, that risk reward system is now fully primed to accept this as a normal way, and you want more money. And now just, it becomes a thing. And so that drug trafficking, same as sex trafficking, they're meeting a need. And with youth, it's very, very easy for them to be exploited in these gray economies. So that's what we're seeing with our youth in foster care and juvenile detention.
And Takoa, you even said it. Someone they think they know, even if it's not very well, and someone they think they can trust. And it's a process. So it doesn't start out hardcore. It starts out simple. And then they twist it to where all of a sudden it was the use idea. That's what the traffickers are telling them. This was your idea. You want to do this. Right. And then they feel trapped and they feel guilty and they're ashamed and they're embarrassed and they don't know who to tell or where to turn. And that's the toughest part.
To give more weight to that, in some cases the youth do ask, but again, they don't go up and say, "Hey, can I hold your weed for you to hold?" They're going, "Hey, I need some money," or "Hey, hey, I need someplace to sleep." And at that point, again, they're consenting to, I need this need met, and I'm allowing you to help me meet this need. They are not necessarily consenting to this illegal act that is trapping them into a system of oppression, right?
Again, we call that survival sex.
Yeah, and that, again, you're talking about responses to gaps in social structures and social supports. And so that's across the board, and especially in high times we still have the pandemic going on, and people are preying on the need for us to be isolated and to be more private because we're trying not to spread this virus. And so I can, again, use every bit of information I can to normalize this for you, so that you don't see the red flags. And again, as a developing brain that's also trying to develop past the point of trauma, they don't have a lot of information, counter information, to combat the misinformation they're being fed, right?
Yes. I thank y'all for both saying that. And then one other thing, when I think about agriculture in the different places, I also think about unimmigrant folks, undocumented folks, because oftentimes we don't always see them or have a conversation, but they're very much need to be included in the conversation because oftentimes that's what they're at. So yeah.
Right. And there's so much fear, I think, especially for our immigration, our immigrants, is because there's that language barrier. They're so afraid they're going to be sent home, or, they're not going to get their papers or whatever. And so it's a lot of fear. I think for all of our youth, it's a lot of just fear of victim blaming, fear that, it's going to be pointed at them and it's going to be their fault, but it's not their fault, And I think we need to remember that, and we need to give grace and understanding and ask questions. If you have any doubts, if you see anything, I always used to, I was a teacher 16 years, and whenever I saw a change in behavior of any of my children, I just started asking questions, hey, what's going on? If there's anything you're struggling with, you don't have to walk it alone. But not everybody has that. And so, but if we do, and in our circles, looking out for the youth and the children around us, because it's tough. You were saying about the isolation, there's so much isolation nowadays that we just got to look out for each other.
Absolutely. I want to kind of lift up something that you mentioned too about showing that grace. Again, I think, and approaching with curiosity. These are two strategies that we employ in our daily work with youth across the board, is approaching with curiosity. And that is, even when you come to someone to help with good intentions, it's important to remember that your need to help does not supersede whatever is going on in that person's life. And so, and to understand that the best way for you to help is to get as much information as you can about this person. And the best way to do that is to start by forming a true connection. And that connection starts with curiosity. Tell me about you. And in wanting to have a true connection with that person, really understanding what's happening, then you'll get the information that you need using the gifts and strengths that you bring to the interaction to help avoid negative outcomes in a person's life that you're connected to. And so I think that's very, very crucial to our work, is approaching all individuals with curiosity and assisting with grace, and understanding that we are not saving them from anything. We are presenting options, right? And because we're not in the middle of the storm, right? We have a different perspective. And so what we're saying is, hey, I don't know if you see this happening, but I do. And I want to, this is what I see. And you let me know if this is what you want. And if what I'm seeing is what you want, we have no further conversation to have. However, but if what I'm seeing bothers you, let's talk more about that. And what can we do? And how do we help, right?
I love that, because I even, one of my youth was like, I don't know why you say I'm being trafficked. I was like, okay, let's talk about the definition. So I just shared the definition of trafficking. And then I went on to a different conversation. A little while later, I came back and I was like, does trafficking sound like maybe it's something that's going on with you? And it gave her time to process and say, yeah, you know what? I can see where you're coming from. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're ready to be helped or saved, like you said. And I think if we look at it too, instead of saying, what did you do? Like, what happened to you? How did you get here? What, is there anything I can do to help you on this walk?
Yeah,
and just being human to human.
That's it.
And we're not always there. It's tough. Life is tough.
Not performance.
Right.
We have to practice.
We do. We have to practice.
We all have to. Yes.
Yes. And like building that connection, like y'all said, this, I feel like also there may be shame, there may be loss of self-esteem in that as well. But having that connection there makes it like let's talk about this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. I've seen a lot of it, and just knowing that, and a fear that you're going to judge them, because they've been judged. It's not our place to judge. It's our place to just be there for them. So it's tough.
Yes. All right. What are some signs of traffickers that the community should be aware of? What is young people and teenagers should be mindful of? Is anything particular? Any signs that we like, okay, this is it.
I find that to be so hard to just concretely pinpoint, because I feel like as far as traffickers, they're so different. As far as, even like I said earlier, the traffickers can be purchasers. So they can, I feel like a lot of what's been happening starts online. And so they might start liking your page or your pictures or whatever, and then they'll try to take you to another site. So they're trying to kind of disconnect, like they'll be on Instagram, let's go to Facebook, let's go to this one. So they'll change apps. I also see that for red flags as far as our youth, if you see youth that are running away, asking them the question, what are they running from? What are they running to? Because runaway is a big red flag. If you see any kind of bruises or injuries, if they've got money that maybe isn't normal, or they're getting new things that they wouldn't normally be able to afford or have, having a very possessive boyfriend or girlfriend that is controlling their phone, that's always calling, that always wants them to answer. Even if there's multiple phones, that'll happen a lot. If they're missing school, if you have kiddos that are missing school, that's a big thing. Or even in the juvenile justice system. I see that a lot of our youth are getting in trouble for things like breaking curfew, having drugs on them, and just doing some of those things that are getting the attention of our juvenile justice system.
Absolutely, I'd have to agree. For those of us who, in our residential programs, our flags that we look for mirror many of the ones Ms. Kathy just mentioned, i.e. kids having money who didn't have before. Like, we know whether our kids have jobs or not. So when we already know they're not working, and then they come and they just purchase, you know, a new pair of shoes or something like that, this gives us information, and I'll start observing them a little more closely to see what may be happening. What we always encourage in those situations is when you see a change in behavior that might signal something different. Again, first start with that curiosity, and this is now when you want to increase contacts. And what I mean by that, increase the potential for connection, because again, another one of our catchphrases is connection before correction. They need to trust you. You're asking them to pull their trust from someone else who is actually providing something for, you know, it's obviously, it's not a good thing, but they are meeting a need, right? They are providing something, and here I am, I'm providing all this, I'm providing the feel good, intangible stuff that has less weight, right? And so again, you approach with curiosity, and you increase it. You try to find as many opportunities to connect with that youth as possible, because it is in that connection is when you're going to find a door you can pull up, right? Or you can get them to open the door for you, but just find more reasons to hang out with them, right? If you go in hot, I guarantee you won't get an answer the first time. They're going to say no. You know, and think of it as someone, as an adult, someone confronting you with, let's just say, your vice, whatever that may be, and you're not ready yet to give up that behavior, that change, or what have you. Your first response will be that of one of defense, right? Even if it is one of acknowledgement, you know, there's still going to be defense. It's like, yes, I do it, and I can continue to, right? That's kind of how our brains are wired. However, shutting down a door by, you know, giving an ultimatum like, well, you have to change your behavior today. Again, that's not going to help, and you're going to lose that connection. And if you lose that connection, you will lose that person. And if the goal is to keep them in a place that provides assistance, you gotta, again, increase opportunities for connection. Find as many points to connect as possible.
And I find, Tacoa, even, and I guess we kind of got into the fact that they're oftentimes going to go back to the trafficking, is that safety planning is a really good strategy. Just like, hey, you know, I just want to make sure you're safe. You know, I'm not here to tell you what to do, but if you find yourself in a situation, if you're having sex with someone you don't know, what are some things you can do to keep yourself safe? If you decide you want to get back to like your facility, if you want to get back to us, do you have a number that you know by heart, that if you don't have access to your phone, you know, that you can call? If not us, do you have 2 or 3 more people that you can call? And so sometimes just letting them know first off that you're there when and if they want to talk. It's always a when and if. I'm always here if you need me. But some ways to keep them safe while they're doing whatever it is that they are doing.
Thank you for that, Ms. Kathy. Thank you. And I'm big on also, like saying, being available for when they're ready to talk, when they're ready to get the help they need. Because oftentimes, if that person is feeling their need, they also want quick support. That's why that plan, like you said, is very important, Ms. Kathy. Definitely.
And they do. It's someone, their traffickers are going to be someone they think they know and they think they can trust. And oftentimes someone they think they even love. So, or really care about, and that they think cares about them. So they're already in relationship with that person. So yeah, it's tough to, so we just need to be there and be supportive, and whatever that looks like for them. and even asking them, how can I best support you with what you're going through?
Yeah, we have to remember you can't take something away without replacing it with something. And keeping in mind, again, we're looking from the outside in and we see something bad. You're talking about replacing a person's reality. You cannot do that without grace. You cannot do that without understanding. You cannot just assume that a person is going to walk out of their reality willingly because you ask them to. Right? You're going to have to convince them that there's a better reality, or there's a different reality, there's a more safe reality, right? Or like, let me at least get you to a middle ground so you can create whatever that reality is. And I'm going to help you, give you the tools to create what your next reality is, because I don't know what it's going to be. I just know that what I'm seeing here leads to this. And again, that comes with connection. And that starts with being curious about a person. And yeah, it's a fluffy word, but love. You have to love your neighbor. If you don't love them, you don't care. And if you don't care, you can't connect, right?
Right.
All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, mental health, a very important one. What are some side effects of being in a toxic environment? How does this impact the mental health, the emotional wellness of youth?
Mental
Well,
health. Go ahead, Takao, you go ahead.
yeah, I'm just going to jump in with all I know, because this is all I've been doing for the past 5 years, and trauma rewires the brain. And again, we're talking about the youth population. Their brains are already developing. We also know that trauma development stops at the point of trauma. And so these are neural pathways that at 16 are still trying to fight and rebuild themselves and repair themselves from trauma that started at 2, 3, 4, or 5. And you add on the trauma of low income, the trauma of lack of employment, the trauma of family separation, the trauma of school failure, the trauma of unaddressed mental health, the trauma of unaddressed physical health, all of these things, the stresses of daily life. You compound all of this and just remembering that this brain is still trying to make sense of life. And you're adding all of this information that is trying to fight through. And so you are talking the long game, because you have to help the brain repair itself, and that it didn't happen overnight. It's not going to be fixed overnight. And so, you're talking about layers upon layers upon layers, and it's a slow process, but it's one that is definitely worth it. Working in youth services, seeing pathways being rebuilt in front of you, it's a wonderful thing to be able to witness and see. And so that's my contribution to mental health. Just it has no choice but to impact mental health, because all of this is happening on brains that are still trying to develop.
Yes.
And so the impacts of this is massive, and one that takes, again, caring, graceful providers willing to go the long haul, because this is a long process.
And I have to give a word of hope, because you sounded you got me a little down. I was like, man, there's so many things. And you're right. You are right. I love that you're being transparent and truthful. But I do have to say there is hope. And the best deterrent for trafficking is literally a healthy relationship. One healthy relationship.
That's consistent.
One healthy connection. Yes, that is consistent. And that is key, because each one of us can be that for somebody. And so there are, like you said, there's so many things that are affecting our youth, that are affecting us as adults. I mean, life is not easy these days. And so connecting with those in your circle, those around you, and just asking questions, being curious, like you said earlier, and just loving people where they are and where they're going, So yeah, I had to throw
Absolutely.
something there.
Oh, absolutely. And I appreciate you for bringing that in, because I am the no frills a person, because I also working with staff members and volunteers, I see a lot of that provider burnout. And it helps to understand what you're going into. And, we started the conversation checking in with yourself, right?
Right.
And not assuming that you're doing something wrong because what you expected to happen by now hasn't happened. Seize on, life, being human is so much about the little moments, the little moments. As a parent, I've taken to heart, the days are long but the years are short. And it's the same, I think, with any human connection. This is a long process, and it's even longer for the person going through it. But if you can just remember that connection, to rest in the hope and the comfort that, if all I do is show up, I've done enough, right?
Right.
And that's what because that's what the youth need, that healthy relationship, that consistent relationship. And if all you are able to do is show up, you fulfill that. You fulfilled it, right? And keep showing up. That's what we need.
And it's easy.
Yeah.
It's something we can all do.
Yes, yes. And one thing I hear from survivors also is the long-term healing. If something happened when you was young, I'm pretty sure when you're an adult, you still have triggers. Those things show up in our love relationships as adults. Sometimes we remember things from our youth. So those are the things I want to talk about and get the nitty-gritty that affects us as adults if we was all have we been in that situation. It's so many barriers and layers to healing our mental health once you've been in that situation. So yeah.
Right.
I want to speak a little bit about those barriers, because I know we're getting to the resource portion of the conversation. And the conversation I was working on to help. And Kathy's going to give some wonderful resources that we have, and we're going to talk about providers. But really, one way to help is to sponsor care and to help remove barriers. And what do I mean by that? Even though most clients, I'm sorry saying clients, but most youth who survivors of trafficking will have access to Medicaid, right? So they'll have insurance and they will have benefits, but sometimes the wait can be long. Sometimes the providers they don't have any more room on the book, and it's often easier to look for providers who are outside of their covered benefits. And so how can they afford that? We'll call up some of these agencies and offer to pay for a session of counseling, for a survivor, a hospital visit for a survivor, a food card for a survivor, something tangible, because again, we are trying to help them rewire those pathways, and tangible need, exchanging need for need, showing that these same needs that were met by this person who took advantage and exploited can be met through this caring community of people that's offering to partner and walk with you. And so thinking of those somewhat out of the box ways, obviously donating to a agency that you trust is important, but think about, how do we make it easier for survivors to access services, to come in, and what are some things that we can do about that? I think is a good starting place for those who want to help.
And a tough one, because like you said, I feel like our resources are really unfortunately limited at this point. So many of our counselors, like you said, there's waiting lists. They can't even take anybody new, so getting that consistent treatment they need for healing can be very, very difficult. I hate to make a shameless plug, but when you were talking about things that a person can do, becoming a CASA is a beautiful thing. It's not as time consuming as you would think. It's a court-appointed special advocate. They do a little training and then they go see the youth once a month. But again, it's that safe, healthy relationship that they're teaching youth how to have. they're showing somebody that they're going to consistently be there and show up. So, and then of course, in your own circle doing those things as well, because I struggle with finding providers to get the counseling for some of the kids that need it, because there's just so limited number of counselors and stuff out there.
Yes, Ms. Kathy, I'm so happy you talked about counseling. It's therapy and counseling is one thing they definitely need after that situation.
Yes.
And helping someone, giving them a reduced discount price or meeting them where they're at is always a great support and one of those resources. Yes,
Right.
definitely. Definitely.
Love it.
Is there any other resources that y'all want to share at this moment? Websites, organizations that's supporting it, anything?
Definitely in our community, calling 211, they actually have an entire protocol on how to handle and how to help you if you're reporting trafficking. There are 2 hotlines that I would love to share. The National Trafficking and Exploitation Hotline, which is 1-888-3737-888. You can also text them, which I think is great for our youth. The text is 233-733 or Be Free. And then the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has a hotline as well. Oh, I say I write that down. It is 1-800-843-5678. And they, on their website, they actually have amazing resources for talking to our youth, for online safety. And if you have a youth that you believe is being trafficked, they will also pair you with somebody that's going to follow you through, like a caseworker, that's going to help you get all the resources and things that you need. But in our local area, calling DCFS and law enforcement if you believe anything's going on. Remember that when you're reporting, you're actually asking for a service. You're just asking somebody to check out and see if this youth is safe. You're not making an accusation. You're just asking for a service. So calling if you think something's going on with the youth is okay. It's something that, we wish people would do.
Absolutely.
Takes a village. Takes a
It
village
does.
to raise a kid and to look out for
Absolutely.
them.
And to keep them safe. And so for our response, we do have, we continue to provide housing for youth, and a lot of our prevention and housing stability services are provided to all youth. And so if you, for youth ages 18 and 25 who are able to live on their own, we have housing programs, short and long term. We also have additional funds for pregnant and parenting youth and youth who all have experienced trafficking. And so those youth will be provided more supports and services, or additional supports and services that specifically speak to the response surrounding surviving trafficking. And for those under the age of 18, we still do have our transitional living program, and interested persons can go through DCFS for those services. And for any youth services at all, we kind of really function as an access point for all youth services. So if you're between the ages of starting at age 16 and like, I don't know what to do, I just know I have a problem, call us and we'll figure it out. We'll sit down, we'll talk to you, and we'll figure it out.
And I love that you serve 16 and up, because I feel like that's such a challenging age for our youth, and services for them are slim. So I'm so thankful that you guys are there doing all you're doing.
Yes. Yes. Well, I'm thankful for this conversation. I'm thankful for you, Ms. Kathy, and all the work that you're doing. Thank you for having this conversation with us today.
Absolutely. It's been a joy.
I would not be able to feel okay with ending this call without giving a proper nonprofit benediction, which is to please support your local organizations in this work by donating.
Yes.
And donate to children's advocacy centers and to Youth Oasis. And if, you know, we're not your organization of choice, there are many, many organizations that are in this space, operating in this space. And we encourage you to research and find out how you can support. And I am available if you are just, okay, you know, I'm not in Louisiana, but I still want to help. How do I help? And I'll be happy to talk with anyone about how to support youth.
Absolutely. And it is National Human Trafficking Prevention Month. January is. Tuesday, the 11th is National Wear Blue Day. So if you're in, I know, look, we're all in blue, but if you're wearing blue in Louisiana, you can use the hashtag Wear Blue Day Louisiana to share those. If I can be of any assistance to you, look at childadv.net. And like I said, I have lots of classes going on this month that you are absolutely welcome to join. They're all via Zoom. I'll send those to you guys and we can share them anywhere they want, so just check out childadv.net to find out.
Yes. Well, I thank everyone. We will put those resources down in the caption when we post this video, and we'll definitely have another conversation because I like this and where we're going.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.